Hi, this is the next lesson in the Drivve Print Technical Certification course, and it's covering the Authentication module. So the Authentication module is a new module in version 3, and allows us to actually lock down the device with the Drivve screen. On the Sharp, it uses the MX3 module, which is an OSA module, and it sets it so that the Drivve screen is what the user sees when they walk up to the device, and they can't do anything until they've authenticated through Drivve and unlocked the machine. So it allows us to do single sign-on so that we can actually store the user's login credentials and share them with Drivve Image. It also allows us to control who's able to do what on the copier, and we can also set it so that we know who the user is. So when they swipe their card or they log in with their phone, they can actually get right in just by doing that. So just like before, the auto setup is going to do everything that it needs to do based off the licenses that you have. And so here I have a authentication license. So when I find a device, I know a specific Sharp OSA 4 machine here, it's going to go ahead and set up all of these modules based off the licenses that I have. So I have an OSA 4 machine, I have MX3 on it. Make sure that the IP address is correct, 172.168.185. 185. So there we go. It finds a Sharp MX511N. It also matched up the correct driver, so it's going to use the driver that I have installed for this. And just like before in the pull print module, where it set up the MX2 or the OSA pull print app, it's going to set up the external accounting application here as well. So I'm going to go into the Sharp real quick before I run the auto setup, and I'll show you what this means. On the left here in the application settings, I have not only the standard applications, which is where Drivve Image and Drivve Pull Print will be, but I also have this external accounting application. And this is the MX3 module in the Sharp, which you need for the Drivve login authentication app. So even if it's disabled, the Drivve setup will actually go in and enable it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Setup Device. Found the device. The printer is already set up. It's going to use the one from before. So it won't do that, but you see here it's configuring the OSA application. So what it's doing right now is it's putting those URLs with the correct Drivve print server IP address and everything into the correct places inside of the administration page. It'll also reboot it at the end, and if there is a card reader set up, we actually use the IC card reader function, and it's going to enable that as well before it restarts the machine. So if I go back to this device here, actually might be rebooting right now. There we go. So it's already booted back up. If I go over to the application settings, I did have a pull print module license too, so you see it set up that pull print OSA application. And then down here in external account settings, it's set up the correct URLs for the Drivve print server. There are two services here. There's the web UI, which is the website that's showing up. And there's also the web service, which is what we're using to listen for all the events from the copier. So it'll set up those two services, and it'll use the correct ports that we're using, and it'll go ahead and enable it. So I'm going to take a look down here, and I see this Sharp device right there. It has a correct IP. I have it announced. It's a mobile target. If you go to the Authentication tab, you'll see I have a couple more options here. I can set a specific password and username if those are different. If I use this Configure Platform button, it'll actually do those same things again. So there, now I have the extra URLs for the external accounting applications, and I can go ahead and remove them or register them here. Hit cancel. So I also have the login type, so I could set that to shortcode if I wanted. Like I said, we're using the IC card reader function, and what that means is that you can swipe the card and it'll do the login in the background. So if I swipe a card and I'm not a known user, it'll ask me to log in and associate my card to my user. But that also means that we can put the full login there or short code there, and the user can still swipe their card. It'll just do it in the background. I can also set an initial screen, so after the user logs in, we can determine where we want to bring them. We can bring them into Drive Print or Drive Image, or the top screen or the app menu. Let's go ahead and set it to Drive Print. Auto release all, that's if we want to release them all when the user logs in. We don't want to do that here. Drive Print only, that's if we only have Drive Print installed, so it'll change the actual graphics and it'll say Drive Print rather than just Drive. And Advanced is the same. So let's see. I'm going to go back to the VNC, and there we go. So the Drive screen shows up first. The login could either be the shortcode or the full login. And actually, the Drive apps will ask the server whether or not they have an authentication license. If they have an authentication license, then they'll display a printer login button at the home screen of the app, so of the iPhone and the Android app. And what you can actually do is use that button to scan this barcode here, and it'll log you in to the machine just as if you had scanned the card. So I'm going to go ahead and just type my credentials in here. Hit OK. I'm not going to tell you my password, although I think you could probably figure it out. Well, I guess you'll see it. And I'm going to log in. So here you go. It's going to actually ask me which account I would like to bill this to. That's a function of the reporting module. We'll go over it a little bit in the next lesson. But if a user is associated to more than one account, then it'll ask them who they want to bill this to when they log in. I'm going to go ahead and bill it to account 1. There we go. So now if you look at the top, I'm actually logged in as Drive. And because we set that initial screen to Drive Print, it's going to take me directly in. I've already logged in here, so it's going to know what user it's for. And it'll show me all my jobs. Also, the functions here are controlled by what type of user I am, and I'll go through that in a second when I go back to the admin page. But I just wanted to point out one more thing, which is that up here, I am logged into the device as Drive, and that is a domain user. And what we can do is securely store the user password. We're actually storing it in Drive Print. We're encrypting it twice. We're encrypting it when it gets stored and also when it gets sent over to Drive Image. And so what we could do is set it so that when the user goes into Drive Image here, they're fully authenticated. We know their username, we know their password, and that means that they could send an authenticated email through Microsoft Exchange, or they could browse folders as themselves or use their home folder, all that sort of stuff that normally requires the user to log in. So it's a full encrypted, secure, single sign-on environment here. No credentials or anything are being stored on the device. It's all done externally through a secure connection. So I'm going to go back here and point out a few things. One, in the settings, we actually have this single sign-on secure password storage button. And if you turn that off, then we can still do some things with Drive Image. We still know who the user is, but you're not fully logged in. And if you turn that off, that means we're not actually storing the password here in Drive Print. We're just storing the username. But you can still use LDAP authentication so that the user is using their Active Directory name and password. We just wouldn't be storing it. If you look right here, you see that we have a live events log. And this is actually why we set up that web service before when we set up the external accounting URLs. So everything that happens on these devices that we have Drive set up as the authentication application, we're going to get an event. So we get an event for every copy, We get an event for every scan, every fax, every login, everything. And that's how we're able to track who's able to do what. So if I go over here on the left, I have a roles section, and I can actually set specific users to specific functions. So if I wanted users to not be able to make color copies or not be able to fax or scan, I can set it with those roles. And all these roles are additive. So if I give a user a copy role, then they'll be able to copy. And if you see right here, if I go to a specific user and I edit them, if I go to advanced, I have which role they are. And you can actually add more than one. So one thing that's worth noting as well is that the login screen there that you saw can be changed. It's just a PNG here that's stored in the Drive application folder. So if I go into Drive and I go into, well, let's see, I think it's in Web. And bin. No, hold on. So one other thing that's worth noting is that you can actually come in here and change the background for that login screen that you saw. So just as if I change it to Drive Print only, it'll show actually Drive Print green background there in the login screen. I could also change it to whatever I wanted it to be. So if you have a big client and they want a customized background, you can do that. If you go into the Drive Print application folder, the program files folder, in UI here, I'll see these login screens. And so based off the type of device that you've got, I can actually open it up and I could edit this if I want. Just make sure you don't do anything over here that might affect the text that pops up. But you could remove that and put a graphic, anything you want, just don't ruin the original or make a copy of it. One last thing here has to do with the logs. There are two different logs here for the authentication application. And I showed you earlier the live events, but also I have the Sharp AA service. And this is where you're going to see everything that's happening with the login screen. You can see all the login events, you can see all the users that come in, and you can see what the Drive external accounting application is trying to do. So any errors there, you could see what's going on. If the screen doesn't pop up or it's taking too long, check out the Sharp AA service log. So that's pretty much it for the authentication module. Like I said, all the roles and the reporting are dependent on the authentication because we need to be the external accounting application before we can control or report on any of the events or any of the other things that are happening. So that's about it. The next lesson will cover the reporting.